So without further ado, Mr. Dave Ramsey.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate the introduction. Again, my name is Dave Ramsey. I'm happy to sign books if you guys want to send them to me. Right, it won't be the legit signature, but right, it'll be mine. Also, can cut up credit cards if you want me to. A little bit about me. I've been with Trimec now this is going on my 12th year. Going on 13th year as of July 1st. But I've got about 10 years in industry prior to that. So all told, I've got about 22 years of SOLIDWORKS under my belt. That I say that only to say I know a lot about the tool, but not everything about the tool. Not so cocky to think that. So I'm also very casual. So I'd like to present to you guys today a few tips on drawings, right, to sort of help automate the process and make things a little easier. As I mentioned, I'm casual. So if there's any questions, feel free to chime in, stop me. We're going to be in PowerPoint and in SolidWorks and in PowerPoint and in SolidWorks and all that good stuff. I'm probably going to kill the camera because, as you can see, my hands move around a lot and I talk a lot and I'll distract myself, and I don't want to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to kill my camera. I'll get on screen and we'll get the ball rolling. I want this screen. Wormhole. Yeah, that was pretty awesome, wasn't it? All right. So again, thank you for allowing me to come present for you folks today. We are going to talk a little bit beyond just views in drawings, right? We're going to look at how we can embed a few things to sort of make our drawings, that process a little more efficient and easier to work with. So kind of the agenda we're going to work through here is we're going to start out talking about layers. If you guys have used AutoCAD or realistically any 2D tool in the past, you've used layers. There's not something that's I feel like is commonly talked about in SolidWorks when it comes to drawings. We kind of, in my experience, I've always just kind of put stuff on one layer and hide and showed as I needed to, right? But layers are there to sort of help us figure out where things are and placement and visibility on the different aspects of the annotations of our drawings. So we're going to talk about those. We'll then move on to talk about the design library a little bit. Mainly in the context of notes in a couple different ways. We'll talk about creating a notes library and then also looking at how we can add in some flag notes to help direct us to different spots on our drawings. We'll then talk some of the difference in table templates between title blocks, sheet formats, that sort of stuff. We'll look at dimension placement. So whenever we go to annotate our various views, right? How can we get the dimensions realistically where we want them, right? We'll then go into talking about title block inputs. So if we, like Adam said, you guys had talked about custom properties recently. So we'll look briefly at the property tab builder. We're not going to go in depth on it other than to mention that it's a thing. And then we'll add some properties to a model and then look at how we can ingrain those into the drawing and kind of push them through, right? And then we'll wrap this up with a little bit about display states. And I say primarily display states only because I feel like everybody knows configurations, but display states are kind of not always talked about. And so we'll talk about really the differences of them and play with them a little bit and show how we can utilize them in our drawings. So starting off, let's talk about layers. And if you guys are as old as I am, then you had these in school. I think I actually had some of these in Tennessee Tech before I graduated college. We're still there. But if you don't know what it is, this is an overhead projector, right? But the way it works is very much the same way layers work, right? We're going to stack our different annotations kind of one on top of the other on top of the drawing sheet. And we can kind of pull off and hide and show the ones that we need as we need to. So this is a bit of nostalgia for me. I love these things. I hope it's a little bit for you too. Come on, PowerPoint. There it goes. So when we go into creating labels, this is the dialog box that we're going to see. And ultimately, we can create new ones. We can delete ones. You can see we've got these fun little creepy eyeballs where we can hide and show and choose what we want to print and not want to print and what colors we want those to pop in at. All that sort of stuff is available to us. So pretty cool stuff. Again, very similar to what we would see in your traditional 2D layers. Now, starting off with at least the default templates in SolidWorks, there really aren't any layers. There's, I think, a per standard and or actually, I think it's none in format are the two that you get right off the bat. So basically, it's putting stuff on the sheet format. Is really the only layer you got. You can create new layers. You saw the dialog box beforehand to do that. As you create those, right, we'll have access to them through a dropdown. Now, here's where it gets really fun, right? And this is where the automation comes into play. Once we've created those labels, those layers in our template, once we go into our system options and document properties, you'll note that a certain set of our annotations, right, we're able to add to various layers. And whenever we select on one of those areas, right, we're going to be able to assign what layer, like in this case, notes, right? We would probably want that on the notes layer, right? Balloons, we'd want on the balloons layer, right? So by assigning them like that and then saving out the template, now whenever we add those in automatically, right, it's already on the layer we want. If we want to hide that out or show that, right, we have the ability to do that right from the fly. So let's jump into SOLIDWORKS. I'll back up one. I went a little too far. Let's jump into SOLIDWORKS and let's take a look at that real quick. And it is, oh gosh almighty, I hit the wrong one. I want this one. Sorry if that made anybody sick. Let's talk about drawings real quick. So what I'm going to do first is let's just, what do I want to do here? Let's just look at a drawing. Let's create a new drawing. We'll start off with one. You can see I've created one that already has some layers. Let's start one that doesn't have layers, as I mentioned. All right. We'll talk a little bit about sheet formats for now. I'm just going to choose an ANSI portrait layout. All right, and I'm not going to add any model views right now. So let's talk layers real quick. So I mentioned that initially we don't have any layers. As a matter of fact, this toolbar is not on the screen by default. If you want the layers toolbar, it's just a matter of right-clicking, going to toolbars, and then we have one for layer, right? So we can toggle that on or off, but it always pops up in this lower right or lower left-hand corner. And so if I want to see that layers dialog box, I simply click on the stack of layers. And in this case, I am going to create a few of them, right? I want to create one, in this case, for balloons. All right, we'll create another one for notes. Dimensions. And then let's do one for tables. We may not add all these things, but we'll at least have the layers for them. All right, so I'll say okay. And then those labels get created. You'll notice the last one we create becomes the active one. In this case, I'm going to move this kind of back to per standard for the time being. But again, you can see my typos and everything complete right there in the list, right? So we've got our layers created. And so now if we want to, we can go into our system options and into our document properties. Now, we'll talk about this again, right? This is not the last time we'll talk about it, but essentially anything on the document properties tab is fundamentally what makes up your document templates, right? So in this case, actually, I'm going to switch this right off the bat. I'm going to change this to an ANSI standard, right? So we'll go ANSI for our standard. And now if I come over here to our annotations, things like balloons, you'll note that we have an option to add that to a layer. So while I'm here, I'll go ahead and add balloons to the balloons layer. In this case, we'll select on notes, and I'll add notes to the notes layer. And let's see, what else did I have there? I think I had one for tables. Yeah. I may have to do that in the property manager for tables. We'll look at doing that. But anyway, got a couple of them assigned. We got notes. Let's do one for weld symbols too. I don't have one of these for weld symbols yet. Let's say okay to that. And then let's create one for weld symbols just so we have one extra one in there. Nice. All right, so I got weld symbols there. Let's bump that back to per standard. We'll go to weld symbols. There's weld symbols. All right, so you see the links, right? You see how this is forming up. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this as a template, right? So I'll come in here and I'll say save as. And I'm going to tell it that I want this to be a document template, or a drawing template, I should say. And I don't want that to go to my default templates. I actually created a templates folder here, and we'll call this layers I think it's metric, but I'll leave it as layers. So we'll say it's layers. All right, so that's my new layers drawing template. And one other thing I want to do too, since I've got all these, I want to use those. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go up to my system options one more time. This time I actually am going to stay on the system options tab because I'm going to make some fundamental changes to SOLIDWORKS. I'm going to go down to my file locations and I'm going to tell it for drawings that I want it to use, well, I want it to have that template location. You can see what I meant to go is say default templates. And in this case, I want my default templates for drawings to now be the one for layers, right? So you can see there's my layers template I just created. So now when I start a new drawing, right, ideally I should have all of these layers popping up for me, right? So we'll say okay. And that looks pretty good. All right, so those layers are created. Let's do a couple things like, let's add a note. Boy, I just love that capital O in note, don't I? My goodness gracious. We'll add a few more of those. We'll add in some drawing views here real quick. Let's see. Do that for the time being. We'll just add in a front view. Perfect, right? So there's my drawing view, and I'll add a few dimensions. Perfect. All right, so ideally, right, these should be applied to two layers. I'm curious if I do that with reference dimensions. Actually, I'll tell you what, let's do this too. Let's go in here to model items, and let's add a couple dimensions for a certain feature here. There we go. And so ideally, if I come down here, yeah, so you can see all these dimensions. Let me come in here, select those dimensions, and I'll put those on my dimensions layer in the property manager. And so then if I wanted to control the visibility of all those, right, I could come to my layers. I should be able to toggle my notes off, as you can see, toggle my dimensions off. Yeah, the reference ones weren't initially to it. I could probably add those to the same layer. Let's see if I can. It'll let me. Might let me. It may not. Oh, look at that. Put that on dimensions as well. There we go. Those should go away. Sure enough, right? So we can turn on all our dimensions, and then they pop back, and we bring our notes back. Again, those are ingrained in the template now at this point, right? So they automatically hit where they're supposed to. If I wanted to change the color, all that good stuff, right? I certainly have the capability of doing that. All right, so you find, let's go back to, not that one, sorry. This one, right? And so that gets us building layers, right? Easy to work with, easy to reference, easy to assign. Let's also talk about adding notes to the design library, but not just adding notes to the design library. There's a couple things, well, one checkbox in particular that is, I believe it's checked by default, or at least it was on every one of my installs. And that's the disable note merging when dragging. So with that turned on, or with it checked, right, as we drag a note off from our design library, if we drag it over a dimension or over another note, traditionally with that turned off, then it's going to want to sync up to that note, and then they both kind of travel as one, kind of attach it to it. I usually leave this turned off, so I have in this case, and I'll show you where it is. But not just that, right? So we'll look at how we can add notes to the design library. So we'll create one, we'll add it in there, we'll create a folder for it so that we can just reuse it at any point in time. And then we'll also look at creating flag notes. Now, I really like flag notes. They've been in SOLIDWORKS for quite some time now. I want to say 2016, so these are not new, but they are very helpful. And so in this case, right, they give us the ability to sort of cross-reference from a notes, I want to say a notes block, but they can't really be a block. It has just to be a notes annotation, right? It can't be a traditional block. But right, we have our line item notes. And then what we can do is we can create flag notes from those. And then in certain areas, we can attach balloons that will then show the same flag shaped as the referenced note. So it just makes it easier to sort of sync up and see the specifics of what you want to look at. So let's take a look at SOLIDWORKS and how that works. In this case, I'll create a quick flag note. Actually, I'm going to get rid of a couple of these notes. I don't need a couple of these. Let's get rid of that one. And then let's start off with a regular note first, right? And add it in. And let's say that all parts must be deburred, right? So all parts must be deburred. That's my note. And it just so happens that I'm going to have to do that a lot, right? So if I want to add that note over and over again, I don't have to want to continually have to type that. So what I can do is come over to my default design library. All I did in this case was come down under my annotations folder and added a folder, right? Pretty simple to do. I called it notes library. And what I want to do, you can see I've got a couple of general notes, and then there's another note one that I added in there. But we'll add this one in. So you can see all parts must be deburred. I want to do that over and over again. So in this case, if I want that note to be here, what I want is to have that folder selected in the task pane of my design library. I'm going to say add to, well, I'm going to select the note, right? And then I'll come back over to my design library. So you'll see it's still selected, folder selected. And I'm going to click the little set of books with the plus symbol, right? Not the one with the asterisk. That's going to reach out and try and add a file location. We want to do add to library, right? So I'm going to select that. And then over in the property manager, you'll see that it's already selected the note, right? Because of that pre-selection. Verifies that it's going to go in my notes library folder, right? And so at this point, if I wanted to add a certain description, right? Like this is a general note, right? Add every time or whatever, right? I could do that. I'll go ahead and say, okay. And so now if we look back over at my design library, let's refresh this. Don't make me a liar. Oh, it made me a liar. What did I not do right? Hang on one second. Let's do it let's do it again. I don't know why I didn't like that. Don't make me a liar. Selected. Add to library. I want to add that note to my library. Style fine, not messing with that. Happy with all that. Add in there. Well, that's a bummer. It did work before. You can see my notes that are in there. It's weird. Anyway, let me add one that I've already got, right? You can see I can add a general note that way. That was the same process I used before. Not sure why it's not working now. I'm not going to belabor that point. That is the process to add notes into the design library. You can see I did the same thing with these two. These are, in fact, different notes.
You think it might be the name? Maybe it's conflicting with one that's already got that name?
Oh, you know what? I bet you're right. Good call, Adam. Let's try that. Good call. Let's call it new or add. No, still note one. Yeah. Deburr. Let's do that. Good call. Look at that. Thanks for the help from the crowd. That's why I say I don't know everything, right? All right, so now we can add that deburr note, right? All we want to. Thank you. Awesome. So there we go, right? Process is in there. Got our notes added to the design library. Cool stuff. Now, the one that I really like is flag notes, and we're going to do that. I want to create a different drawing real quick for flag notes. So you can see I've got a separate part open called the overturning mechanism. If you guys have ever taken composer training, you've seen this one for sure. If you've had the assemblies class, you've seen this too, if you've run through the exercises. So what we're going to do in this case is create a flag notes. I'm going to create a drawing of this part, right? So I'm going to come down and say, or this assembly, make drawing for part and assembly. You'll note that the default templates, I should have, look at that, all my layers. Fantastic. Now in this case, this is a little bigger, so I'm going to change my sheet properties here. I'll go with a little bigger sheet. You can't see this. This popped up the dialog. I'm going to pick a B size landscape, and then for whatever reason, it only pops up on my primary window. You can see I don't have any OK buttons or anything, so I got to come over here, drag it over, say apply, and then it makes the change. All right, so In this case, I'm going to drag this isometric view of my model. We'll do a quick scale change here. Go 1/8. Pretty good. And then let's create a flag note. Now, I really like flag notes. They add just like regular notes, but you do have to kind of take a little special step here. So in this case, you'll note I placed my note. I need to come over and tell SOLIDWORKS that I want to create a number note, right? So I'll say number. That gives me a -1 there. And I'm going to say inspect all welds on table, right? Inspect all welds on table. So that looks pretty good. I'll come down with a note number 2, and I'll say add washer, split washer, and nut. And then I'll say, let's see, add Loctite for metal to metal, right? So those are my 3 notes. And before I'm done with it, or actually I could do it at any time, I guess, but realistically, what I want to do is I want to come in here and select the numbers themselves, right? So if I come over here and select the number, you're going to note that it doesn't really populate the whole property manager. It really just gives me the number, and then it gives me this border, and then down here at the bottom, it gives me a checkbox that says add to flag note bank. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to check that. So that gets my first flag note. I'm then going to come down and select number 2, and we'll add that to our flag note bank. So you can see number 2 pop in. I'll select number 3. We'll add that to our flag note bank. Now that adds them in, but what I can also do, which is pretty cool for each one of these individually, is I can add a border around them to get that unique symbol. So we'll say for note 3, let's do just a plain circle for that one. For note 2, we'll do a 5-sided flag. And then, oh, nope, I did that for the wrong one. All right, well, 3 is a 5-sided flag. Let me select 2. We'll make that one a circle. That was on me. And then we'll come back to 1. And why isn't it? Hang on. What am I doing wrong? That one. That's that one. I want it to be. Okay, that looks better. Let me do that one. Yep. Weird. Let's do a triangle around that one. Okay, perfect. Good deal. Right, so that gets my note created. And so now if I want to reference these notes, right, on specific areas, actually, let's make this a little bigger so we can read it. Let's do this. There we go. Right, so now if I want to reference this, what I can do is I can come in with my balloons, and I can tell it that I want to reference the flag note bank in my balloon. And so here you see flag note bank for number 1. In this case, since I consider the table, right? So I'm going to reference where the welds would be on the table. It gives me a reference to number 1. So I'll select number 2. In this case, bolted connections, right, that are going through the table that we want to have that, you know, that washer, split washer, and a nut on it, right? I'll come down and add that. And then for the metal to metal stuff, like where these pillar block bearings are being put in, right, I want Loctite on those connections. Right, so now I've got those nice flag notes that now reference the actual full note, right? So the thing that's cool about these is these will extend across multiple sheets. I mean, I'm showing in the context of one sheet here, but if you do have a multi-sheet drawing, say you're documenting this table subassembly on a sheet further down, right? These flag notes then cross between pages, which is really nice. All right, so I really like flag notes. There are some limitations to them, as I mentioned. They cannot be blocks, but again, they're not limited to just the same sheet, right? Presenter is not wanting to work right. All right, so moving on, let's talk about bills of materials, right, and reuse of columns, and how we can create our own bill of material template, how we can modify the columns that were given in the default bill of materials. pretty easy stuff. We can add various file locations for where we want to reference our bill of materials at. So we don't have to reference just the default locations, obviously. Let's jump into SOLIDWORKS and take a look at that since we've got our fancy drawing here. And what I'll do is I'll just add another sheet since we've kind of cluttered that one up. We'll go back with an isometric view. And I'll change that scale. And we'll change the way it looks as well. Nice. All right. So at this point, we're going to create a simple bill of materials. We'll start off by using the basic default bill of materials. So if I just say table bill of materials, it's going to ask me to pick a drawing view. In this case, I only have one, right? So I'll pick the one that I have. And we all know the various types of bill of materials. I'm just going to go with the basic parts only. That's going to give me a realistic count of everything in there, right? Nothing extra. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And we're given our default bill of materials that everybody's seen time and time again, right? We've all seen this one. We know it. We love it. What a great bill of materials it is. But it may have more information than what we want, or not have all the information that we want, or it may not be in the place that we want. So in this case, right, you can see we've got a description column that really hadn't been filled out yet. Maybe we hadn't set those custom properties in our model. So we don't have that information. So for me right now, I feel like I kind of want to get rid of that, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click at the top column, and I'm going to tell it that I want to delete this column, right? And now that's gone. All right, so we've got that bill of materials taken care of. Looks pretty decent, and it's not bad. But what if we want to reuse that? So if I want to reuse that, I have the ability to save that out as a template. Actually, I'll tell you what, before I do that, let's sort of a little bit of more functionality here. One of the things that's kind of cool about this is a basic Excel table. If we want to change any of these columns, we can simply double click the header of the column. In this case, this is referencing a custom property for part number, or well, actually the part number or the file name in this case is what that is that it's referencing. But you can see we have the ability to access our custom properties here. So if we had material, if we had that description built in, right, we'd see that information there. So it's pretty cool. We can also move these columns around. So in this case, if I wanted my quantity to appear before the part name, right, I can do that. And so in this case, I like this bill of material. Let's go ahead and save this out. So if I right click on my quadrant at the top of it, you can see I have the option for save as. And by default, it wants to give me a template. So you can see that I created a custom templates folder. It's empty right now, but I was playing around before we did this, obviously, right? So I'm going to say this is Dave's bomb, right? So that's Dave's bomb. It's the way I like it. It's the way I do it. So that's my bill of materials. So what's kind of nice about this now is if I need to reference that bill of materials again, right? If I go back and want to build that out, you can see it wants to give me my bomb standard. Of course, I can browse out from there. And in this case, I created my custom templates folder, right? So there's my Dave's bomb template, right? So if I say OK, open, now when I say OK, it's going to give me a duplicate, right, of what you see there, right? So pretty cool stuff, right? We can now save that template out, reuse that information, pull it in, what custom properties that we want into our bill of materials, and reference what we need to. I do think I missed something on the PowerPoint here as far as, I don't want to skip to the next one because then we'd go back to the PowerPoint and then you would already seen it. And that kind of ruins it. You saw that really quick. Let's talk about when we do our save as, so not only can we save as a template, but we can also export our bill of materials into an Excel file, right? Or basically comma separated values, right? But one of the other cool things we can do is we can bring along thumbnails with that, which is really, really nice. So not only do we get the information in the bill of material, but we also get a visual or a little preview of the part itself, which is really awesome. So let's jump back in and take a look at that. I'm going to kill this bill of material because I don't really need this second one. Let's see. Get out of here. All right. So that's pretty cool. Let's take a look at when we save these out and look at our thumbnails. So again, I'll right click on that little quadrant. I'll say save as. This time I'll change my file type to Excel. And let's see, where do I want to put that? Let's just put it in the custom templates folder. Why not? And we'll put this out as Dave's BOM export, right? So there's my BOM export. I'm going to send that, and I want to tell it that I want to include my thumbnails. And so I'll say save. And so it will plug and chug. And let's see, if I go to my Windows Explorer, you can see just created. For reference, I am in the central time zone, everybody. So I'm behind you guys a little bit. But you can see there's my Dave BOM export that was just created. So if I double click on that, you can see we get our nice bill of material, and check out all those awesome previews, right? Pictures worth 1,000 words, and now management can figure out, right, what the heck's in these bill of materials. So it's fantastic. Win-win for everybody.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
When you do the export those thumbnails and you go into the Excel software and you're looking at it as you did just then, if I go to print, is that I can't see, is that occupying the column A?
It is, yes, sir.
So it will print, it will actually give me a print. When it prints it, it'll print the image that's in column.
It should. Let's see what, I'm curious what print preview would give us. I don't know how to find print preview anymore.
It's right there.
Where?
When you hit print, it automatically defaults to it right now.
Oh, that's right. Oh,
Unless you can go to page layout and look at print preview too.
And it looks like they're all isometric views. Do you have to do something in the model, or is that
yeah, no, I haven't done anything special in any of these models. That's just, I assume it just takes the isometric view. I've never seen it take anything but that, truth be told.
So you don't have to manipulate that. It'll import itself in.
Correct. Yeah, I did nothing to make these import the way they did.
I was looking at the top view. It'll still bring in the ISO view.
Yeah, does it use the same thumbnail that Microsoft is grabbing for Explorer?
Say that one more time, Adam.
Is it possibly using the same thumbnail file that Microsoft Windows Explorer is?
I mean, I would imagine it's the same preview that you get, right, in Windows Explorer. It looks like the same preview image. Now, something to note. Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, the print preview is under view, not page layout.
Oh, it's under view. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh man. Blah blah blah.
The page break is where you preview that, but if you're looking like to the old preview, that's the one that comes up when you just hit print.
Yeah, I do believe I'll test it out. I'm fairly certain it prints. It makes up one of the columns. I see no reason it wouldn't print. To my knowledge, it does. One thing I was going to mention, something I could test, and I may test it here later on, is I could open up, say, this rod guide and just save it in a different orientation, because I'm curious if they've all been saved in the isometric orientation. If that could be it. I don't think that's it, but curious, right? Just to test it.
Well, I think it's how the planes are set up, the way the Windows Explorer gets. The only reason I'm remembering something along those lines is because we've got a team at Outtake right now that is trying to change our views on our thumbnails so that people can see them better, like what you're seeing right now. And so it's got something to do with the orientation and the way the planes are set up within the model, how Microsoft is grabbing that thumbnail.
Gotcha. Could be, yeah. I'll dive into it. I'll see what I can find out too.
And just a follow up, I think maybe if I'm looking at the row, I can't tell the rows. Row 7 looks like it has 2 holes. So if I make a modification to that part, I don't know how. I'm not very familiar how quickly thumbnails are updated. But if I get 3 holes out of that, and I generated a bill of material and brought those thumbnails in, it would have 3 holes instead of 2 holes, I assume.
You should, but I would like this document. I wouldn't. Blah, blah. This document would not update, right? This is a static image at this point, if that makes sense. But you would need to re-export. But then yes, you should see those three, if that makes sense. Once you re-export that file.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I've got a feeling the thumbnails, though not those, like you said, those are static, but
Correct.
thumbnails themselves are just updated on a save, I think.
Yes, I think so. Correct.
What I'm saying is you would want to make those visible if you've done some edits, and then somebody downstream looks at that and goes, well, this one has 2 holes, and we're producing 3 holes, and then that would cause some confusion.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, no, it definitely could.
Maybe.
All right. Let's see. Going back to where was I? This one. All right. So let's talk about dimension placement in the sketch real quick. Now, this may be old news to everybody here, but I found nowhere where it talks about this in any of the documentation as far as what's actually happening in the background here. But it's pretty cool, and I usually end up using auto arrange anyway. So it's something that I've ended up disabling on my machine for future use, right? I've got it enabled here, so you'll see it. But this is pretty handy. What this does essentially is places, when you insert your model items, right, your dimensions marked for the drawing, right, this little icon right here. What that does is it brings the dimensions in the exact location that you place them in the sketch when you are creating that feature, right? So if you've done your due diligence when you create your sketch and get your dimension placement exactly where you want on, say, your front, top, and right, then when you bring those dimensions in, they're going to pop up pretty close to where you want them in the drawing, right? So that's what that's meant to do. Now, a lot of times people don't want that, right? Because we don't always design parts that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch back to our idler arm sheet, which I think I closed down. Is this layer 1? Yeah, that's fine. We'll use this one. That's a little messy, so let's add a new sheet. And we'll come in here and let's refresh our view palette, and let's add in some views here, right? So we're going to add in a front, top, and right. I'm going to let that project out. And I got a filter on somewhere. Let's get that turned off. Get out of here. All right. Let's turn those filters off. So I've got my basic views. What I want to do now is bring in the dimensions for it, right? I'm going to bring in the actual model items. So in this case, right, under annotations, you can see there's my model items command. And what I want to do is set this up so that I bring in the dimensions for the entire model. I want to import those into all my views. In this case, I don't think I have any whole callouts or whole locations, but we'll add them in just in case. There actually may be one there, but I don't think that's a whole wizard feature. And you'll notice that use dimension placement in Sketch is turned on, right? So if I say okay, it's going to go ahead and throw those dimensions wherever it can. Well, in the place that they were created in 3D space, so to speak, right? So not always the best for conveying on a flat 2D view. So with that turned on, what I find that I've done a lot of times in order to sort of clean it up, since SOLIDWORKS has what's known as an auto arrange, we can window select kind of all the dimensions, and you get what's known as the dimension palette. That's this little pop-up icon that pops up here. And truth be told, this is a very, very powerful tool. Most of what you can do in the property manager on the left right now, you can do right from this tab, right? We can do tolerance, precision, add reference dimensions, add inspection labels, all sorts of good stuff, right? The thing I'm interested in, though, is this auto arrange. So if I say auto arrange, it's going to take its own initiative and say, okay, well, even though these dimensions are where they were when they were sketched, I think I can make it look a little cleaner and sort of spread those out a little bit. And it does a pretty decent job. I don't really like these overlaying lines, but you can select the dimension and drag those down and shorten those up. So it's serviceable. So that's what auto arrange does. Now, if I go back, and let's get rid of some of these dimensions real quick, and let's go back to talking about adding in our model items. Again, I want the entire model, but I'm going to turn off this use dimension placement in Sketch. Now, when I turn that off and decide to use this, SOLIDWORKS is going to basically do auto arrange all on its own, which if you're used to adding in the dimensions and then making that secondary step to go in and auto arrange them, it's going to save you some time. So if we just say add the dimensions, it's going to take that initiative and just auto arrange them automatically on its own. And now it's a lot cleaner. So while initially it might sound like a great idea to add the dimensions in the sketch placement, maybe it's not exactly what you want, right? So just know that that's a feature. We can toggle that on or off. And it does give us different results, but it's basically, do you want it auto arranged or do you want it in its default placement, right? It's what you really end up with there. All right, so let's talk about title block entry here and ingraining some properties. So in this case, you can see that we want to populate a title block, and SOLIDWORKS gives us some title blocks from the factory that already have some notes somewhat populated. They're not necessarily linked to anything, but they're kind of populated there. So we're going to utilize some of that primarily with our own template here, right, that we've got going on. So, right, we can bring those properties over, right, and have them autofill, right, from finish, you know, description, part name, all that good stuff. And of course, all those come from, right, our part, right? So we're going to look at adding those in. So let's switch back over to SOLIDWORKS. And in this case, I've got the part idler arm here, right? So there's the part we just created that drawing view from. And just to kind of prove out, right, you'll see initially, oh, shoot. Let me cancel that. I was playing around with that. Let me kill that without saving it. Let's do that again. Here's documents. Let's do that one. And now we shouldn't have any properties. Perfect. Right. So no custom properties currently. Now, I am going to ingrain some properties here, right, so that we can sort of populate those down to the drawing template, right? So to do that, what I'm going to do is use the property tab builder. Now, I've gone ahead before this and built a little brief menu. Now, if you guys have talked about this already, you know that this is a very simple version that can get, you know, very simple, or it can get very robust. Depends on what you want to do. If you haven't seen this before, the property tab builder can be accessed from your start menu under your SOLIDWORKS tools folder for whatever your version is, or you can click here for template options, and then it will allow you to launch the property tab builder. This is actually the template that we're running right now that you can see on the right hand side. I'm going to click property tab builder, and you'll note that it pulls up in its own window, right? So this is a separate tool outside of SOLIDWORKS, but in this case, just to give you a sneak peek of how I built this, right? If I go and open that up, you can see there's description, drawn by, which I think I actually need to rename this to drawn by. I'll fix that on the fly, right? So we'll come in here, we'll save that. Looks pretty good. And basically that's what it is, right? So this is a list. It's got a lot of options here. I gave it the option to also allow some custom values. So if I wanted to type in a custom name, I can do that. So really cool stuff. I think I did a similar thing with menu or material, right? Allowed a custom value. Did that with purpose, right? So that's what we're looking at right now. I'm going to save this real quick, and we'll see if it incorporates. We'll go over here, select that. Okay, maybe it reloaded it. We'll see. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my description. I'll say this is a cool arm for idling, right? Instead of calling it an idler arm. I'll say that it's drawn by instead of picking one of the default values. I'll just say that I drew it. Material, I'm actually going to leave that blank. And for a special reason, right? I want the field created, but I want to fill that in with something other than one of these three values. I'll say it was actually checked by Stu, and I'll say that all happened today, right? So cool things we've got created. I'll go ahead and say apply. And now as I say apply, what's happened is SOLIDWORKS has ingrained that now into the file properties of my part here, right? So at this point, you can see I now have a description. There's my cool arm for idling. Yeah, oh, I should have reloaded that. Anyway, it says list 4. Next time I load that up, it'll correct itself to say drawn by. There's my Dave. Stu checked it. In this case, for material, instead of what I had put in there for default, right, I'm going to tell it that I want to choose from, whatever's been applied from the SOLIDWORKS material library, right? So now, in this case, I don't have that specified. That's okay. You get the idea. We'll say okay, and we'll come in here, and just for giggles, we'll call it plain carbon steel, right? So now we have a material, and I'll go ahead and save the part. And is it going to save that? Save. All right, cool stuff. Now let's make a, I've already got a drawing going for it. Let's switch back to our drawing here for layers. Whoa. All right, and let's take a look at our title block. Initially, right, you can see that the cool arm for idling has now populated in our description box. If we go into our sheet format, so if I right click and say edit sheet format, you'll note that if I hover over this, SOLIDWORKS is going to show me the reference to where it's pulling that property, right? So from the sheet properties, from description, right, you can see where it's pulling that up. In this case, if I wanted to add in some extra things like who it was drawn by, right? In this case, you can see there's already a note here, but it's not linked to anything. So if I want to populate that with a custom property, I need to link it to that property. So with the text box selected, from the property manager, you're going to notice a little icon that looks suspiciously like the property manager with a chain link on it. So we're going to select that, and we're going to tell it that we want to link a property from the model, right, found in the current drawing views and our sheet properties, right? So that's where our drawing is. And in this case, I want to pull in what is my list for it. So it's going to be drawn by, you can see as soon as I select that, it says Dave. In this case, we can, say, when did Dave do that? Right. Well, Dave did that today. And so let's get the check date, right? And then, oh, well, Enron would be we'd be in trouble, right, with regulations, because I just drew it and checked it is what it looks like there. But I'm going to say somebody else checked it here. So I'm not going to get myself in trouble. I'm going to say Stu checked that out, right? So, because that's what we said earlier. And then maybe we're that good, right? We just did it both in the same day. Even though I'm going to pick the same date, I probably should have made a drawn by date, but you guys get the idea, right? And see what's happening. So in this case, we'll say checked by one more time. Oh, check date, excuse me. All right, say okay. Now that populates. You can see this one is already set up for material in the material box. So all those custom properties now start to populate and kind of flow through. The other nice thing about doing that with the property tab builder is that, everybody adds consistent properties to the model, right? Now you don't have some people forgetting to add material, some people forgetting to add a description, whatever the case may be, right? So really does help sort of speed that process along. Going back to the sheet, this is super easy, right? We have a confirmation corner up in the top that allows us to kind of bounce back very quickly, right? So you can see now we've got all of our title block information populated.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Is that a template you're save as a template to keep the properties, or is it a sheet format? Where are the properties that you just created? And
Yeah.
so, if you saved it as a template, would what appears now be on that sheet when it comes back in, or would it just be blank?
So whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Let me get back to this. So what I just did when I was editing this sheet format, this information, these properties, that stays with the format itself, not necessarily the drawing template. We'll talk about that in just a second, as a matter of fact. So what that means is you can apply this sheet format to other drawing templates and still get the benefit of having those links to the properties, because they're going to link out to the models that you add in. So that information travels with the format itself, separate from our template. I always like to kind of consider drawing templates kind of twofold. You have the drawing template information itself, and then you also have the sheet format information. So they're kind of two things that fully make it up. But no, to answer your question, this travels with the sheet format. All right. So speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about PowerPoint. Oh, my goodness. All right, PowerPoint's froze. That's not good. There it goes. It finally decided to move. Went a little faster than I wanted it to. It's all right. It's okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the difference between drawing templates and sheet formats, right? So what do drawing templates include, right? This is basically everything in our tools options. Remember our document properties tab, right? So that information, right? So the custom properties we ingrain in the file itself also travel with the template. So in this case, you saw us ingrain custom properties to the part file itself. We can also ingrain custom properties to the drawing template. So those go. Drawing views travel with the template. Excluding detail in section, we can do things like predefined views. So if you want like a default front, top, right, isometric, or realistically, the drawing views that you are the model views that you create in the part or assembly. So if you have a specific zoomed in view or whatever that you created and it's in your part, those will be available, right? But things like detail sections that are based off of those types of views, you don't have access to. Multi-sheet. So in this case, we can get a multi-sheet template that has different sheet formats across those different sheets, right? So it's kind of a culmination. When we talk about just sheet format, it's much simpler. Now we're talking about the various annotations we want in the title block, what those notes are, checked by, drawn by, tolerance, stack up blocks, pictures, company logos, that sort of stuff. Sketch geometry is oftentimes in our title blocks in our sheet format. Our drawing borders and zones are all controlled from the sheet format, as well as anchors and tables. Now, as far as how they're saved out, again, you can create a template that has a sheet format ingrained, and you get this DRW DOT. Where we access our various templates is in our system options file locations, and then you can create new directories for custom stuff and point to it and all that good stuff. When we talk about sheet formats, they can be applied across various document templates, and they have their own file nomenclature. They have their own file location where they're saved. So again, think of the templates as realistically, this is where our view information is held, and this is where our title block information is held. So let's take a look at that, and then we'll come back to the display states and stuff like that real quick. So when we talk about templates and title blocks, you can see in this case, right, I can start a new sheet. By default, it wants to give me the same sheet. If I go to the sheet properties, I have access to a lot of information. We'll start off, going to sheet properties is super easy. Multiple ways you can do it. I always like accessing it from the tree. I find that's the easiest place to access it. You can get there from the sheet itself, but you have to right click and then you have to click an additional menu and then it's there. So I always like going to the sheet itself and then you just right click and it's just right there. So if we go to those properties, these popped up on my main screen. You can see it gives us access to a couple things. One, we can change our sheet size and we can control what kind of formats we see. If I don't want to see the format, maybe I want a B size for this sheet 3. Maybe I don't want to see the sheet format on it. So if I move this over to apply those changes, if I say apply, you'll note that I get a B size landscape, but now there's no real sheet format shown. It still has one, but I've kind of taken it out of the picture, at least initially. If I go back to those properties, this over, we'll turn that back on so you can see some of this zone information. Note that we don't see any zoning information, right, when we're not displaying the sheet format. If I want to manipulate that zone info, right, I can now do that. Of course, it was set up for 2x4. Actually, we'll go ahead and say okay to this and you'll see those pop back. So there's our, right, A and B, 1, 2, 3, 4. If we want to manipulate that, super easy to do. Right, zone parameters, we can bump those up. So if I wanted to go say 4x6, right, I have the ability to do that. I could choose to evenly space those, or I could add those into margins and then dictate my margin size as well. In this case, I'll go ahead and say apply changes. You can see that pop up. Again, if I want to apply different sheet formats, still in the properties. Let's see. I've got a few of them in here. There's a bunch of different A4s for landscape. I don't have a lot of different Bs, I don't think. Yeah. But again, you can see we can apply different ones, right? So in this case, it's going to be an A size, but we can do various. Come on, let me expand that. Let me get over here. Hang on one second. Well, my preview window is not expanding for me. Oh well, you can see it's changing over here. But suffice it to say, right, different sheet formats for different sheet sizes. You can apply them across the board. Right, so now we've got different sheet format, different zoning information, right? And still, in this case, I think that's still on a B-size sheet. So again, document templates are kind of twofold. We have our sheet format that handles a lot of the ancillary information, and our drawing template that handles the view information. All right, what am I at? Oh, I need to hustle. All right, so last thing we'll talk about here, as far as kind of cool to play around with, is display states versus configurations. We'll talk briefly about some of the differences between the two, and then we'll jump in SOLIDWORKS and kind of show how we can manipulate a few of those things around. So what's the fundamental difference? I always like telling people that display states are the visual, configurations are the physical, right? So in this case, when we're dealing with display states, we're changing the color of something, whether we're hiding it or showing it. You know, what's the surface finish looks like? Is it glossy, right? Is it pretty? Is it transparent, right? When we deal with configurations, it's, you know, we're changing it physically, right? We're removing features. Maybe we're, you know, situations where we don't have a component in an assembly for a particular configuration, right? We're making fundamental major changes. So what does that mean, right? So when we talk about display states, right, we're viewing things, obviously, right? We can hide and show transparencies. They are beneficial because it makes it easy to see and understand certain things. It is important to note that these models are still heavy. And I say that because, you know, we still get like bill of material count. We still have it fully resolved in the assembly, right? That sort of stuff. When we talk about configurations, now we're talking about, again, physically changing it, right? Large motor versus small motor versus no motor, right? In this case, right, in the no motor configuration, we're not going to get a bill of material count for the motor. So with display states, again, we're just hiding. So we still have things like collision detection, mass properties, BOM calculations, right? Pack and go still work. The model's still loaded into memory, but the biggest advantage is that now we basically relieve the graphics card or the video card, right? We're not having to render all those faces and facets and things like that, right? Removing that graphical info. Whereas whenever we suppress, it's kind of like temporarily deleting the feature or part, right? When we suppress, we're still subject to parent-child relationships, so to speak, right? So when we suppress a parent, it automatically has to suppress the child, right? We're actually a little more limited, right? We can delete parents without deleting children, but we can't suppress it. So note that suppressed components are excluded from mass properties, BOMs, and collision detection, right? So depending on what you need, right, there's different uses for each of them. So let's jump back over to SOLIDWORKS and let's go to our overturning mechanism drawing. Let's talk about some of the display states. Now, I've created a few of these. We can jump into the model too and kind of play with them. But whenever we create our model view, obviously we have the ability to switch configurations from the top under the reference configuration dropdown. So this will change the physical. And then if we roll down in the view property, about halfway, there it is, I went past it. We can see all of the display states we have in the model. So in this case, right, I have a no motor display state that I could change that to. Or I have a blue motor display state, right? I think I have a transparent table display state, right? So depending on what I need to show, right, I can still do all that. Now, while I have this here, everything in this bill of material is still valid, right? If I come in here to the no motor display state and over to my drawing view, right, and down in here to where I can find this overturning mechanism, and there's a motor in here somewhere. We just search motor. Right, so there's a motor, and in this case, right, you can see, right, it's kind of ghosted out. But if I select it, So it's this one, sorry. If I select it, right, you can see the bounding box selects and it picks it in the bill of materials. So it's still physically there, right? So display states give us the ability to, show things on a different level, but still have a lot of the fundamental function that we want here without a lot of the graphics load. If we roll over to the assembly itself real quick, you can see that these are all sort of grouped together. Now, by default, what SOLIDWORKS does is it links the display states to the configuration. So if I roll through these different configurations, you'll note that I have different display states for each configuration. You're not limited to that though, right? You can see we have a no vendor configuration that has no motor, right? If I go back to default, I've got basically all of those display states. Now, if I don't want those linked, right, I have the option to just clicking, I guess, realistically, whatever active one there, go into properties, and we have a checkbox for link display states to configuration. So if I choose to clear this and say, okay, now it doesn't matter what configuration I'm on. Note that I have access to every display state, right? So this can get kind of confusing, but it also lets you, create the display state once and then use that across multiple configurations, which can be really handy. Just for the sake of clutter, I'm going to take that back, right? But the process to create these display states is super easy. You can see that if we wanted to transparent the cylinder, for instance, right, we can come down to our display state. We can say add display state, and we'll call it, double click on it. There we go. Transparent cylinder, right? So there's my transparent cylinder. And then what I'll do is I'll come in and just make that component transparent, right? So now if I switch back to, say, blue table, right, component is no longer transparent, right? Let's go back to transparent cylinder. We've got that. And, maybe I want to add the plate as transparent too, right? So I can select it and do the same thing, right? And so now we've got a display state that shows just that, right? So it's super easy to change them. Let's see, there is one other aspect to this that I feel like is important to mention if you get into playing with these. You can change these by color. You'll notice that I've got a blue motor and a red motor. When you do this, let's say if we change this motor mount. So if I wanted to say, let's make a purple, we'll do something like that, or yellow mount, right? So in this case, if I wanted to, man, that's terrible. Sorry. That's awful.
At least you accidentally do it. When I spell it, it's just on purpose.
I should have typed yeller. That's how I say it. So, all right. So in this case, if I wanted a yellow mount, right, I can select my mount, go up to my appearances. And in this case, what we want to do is we have to change the appearance, but now we have to think on the fact that this is a component in an assembly. So you'll notice that it wants to apply this appearance at the part level. Parent-child relationships, right? Part is king in SOLIDWORKS. So what I want to do is I want to apply this at the component level. I want to say that this component, in this case, I want it to be this nice bright yellow. And then I should be able to say, okay. Oh, let me make sure. Yeah, so I want that to apply to just this display state. And I'll say, okay. And so now I've got a yellow mount. And if I switch back to, say, transparent cylinder, you'll notice that it shifts back to that sort of blah green, right? If I go back to yellow mount, now I've got a yellow mount. So again, really easy to use and manipulate. And they take care of the visual of your assembly, right? Rather than the physical.
Yeah, we've done some studies at Altec in regards to configurations and display states, and it's a night and day difference. If you can keep stuff in display states, you can really reduce the task in the system.
Yep. Getting rid of those graphics triangles is huge. So that's what I had for you guys. I appreciate your time. Hopefully I kept it close to an hour. I think I was close to it. I may have gone a little over. Sorry. But I appreciate your time, everybody. If anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to try and address them. Let me know what you got.
May I ask a general question regarding document properties or file properties? I know
Sure.
You were adjusting your properties in your drawings using the little format. Well, I take that back, the little link icon.
Oh,
If
yeah.
I'm just to look at if I've created a model and now I've created a drawing, and I just want to look at the overall document properties like file name, description, revision, all that stuff. Where is the best place to go to look at that list of all of the properties? Where it's usually it'll start with SW dash something.
Oh, right. To see what's available. So where I always go to that, and I'm sure there's an actual list of it. I always go to the property itself. Actually, let's see. I know you can go. If we go, good question. Hang on, let me think. I was thinking it showed us the list there.
They put the model or the file name always under when they do a title block automatically.
Right.
It calls the drawing number.
You think
go back and edit that or something?
You think
Right.
the property manager would show some of that when you go in there, like you're creating it, and you get the drop down to like autofill for you?
Well, so that's what I was thinking, but I was hoping it would show me like if we did material. Well, if we do material, it may do it. But I was hoping. God Almighty, that's terrible. Material.
Would that be in the drawing or go back to the model?
So in this case, I mean, you could ingrain it from either spot realistically, but I would go to the. I always consider part king, right? All the information, if you can include it in the part, that's where you're going to be able to access it the easiest. Where is that list? There is a list of those properties that you can pull. I may have to get back with you on it. I'm struggling to know where that is.
A basic extrusion, rectangular extrusion.
Yeah, the only reason I was thinking maybe not here, because sometimes with this and with the drawing, it's only going to give you what's available for that file. But if
Right.
you go to the property tab builder, I'm wondering if in the property tab, like if you're creating or modifying the one you had, the template you
Right.
just had, property tab builder, I'm wondering if you could see it in there, because I know inside of that, you could say, okay, like say if you create say if you create text or something, and you can, yeah. And so then if you go to the right side and you hit the drop down on value.
Sorry. Yep, there you go. Good call.
Where are you in a?
That's in the property tab builder.
Yeah, so a couple ways you can access this property tab builder. Go ahead.
So you can, so if you're not in SolidWorks connected, you can access this from the start menu.
Yep. So this is also, I was going to mention the same thing. So start menu. If you go down to your SolidWorks tools folder.
A little known fact though, and I just found this out because I did a presentation similar. Well, not this was on mastering metadata on here in Iron Slug, and I was using SolidWorks Connected because that's what I get as a slug leader. And
Sure.
SolidWorks Connected is not in your start menu. You can only get to it from your task pane.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Where did you go just then? I saw you go into your all apps.
So if you hit your start menu and just type in property, and it'll start filtering
It
down.
says SolidWorks tools. We're on 2023, so that's that was.
Yeah. So in this case, it would be, I did do all apps, but yeah. So I did all apps, right? And then it'll be whatever your version is, right? In my case, it's SolidWorks Tools
Where is
2025.
Go to my drawing.
Are you asking how to link it from the drawing?
Well, I know. I saw him click the button over here to link it, but where is it keeping the? I'm trying to go back to my.
Where's it pulling
So I wonder if what you're asking is where the custom, where is it holding those files, like file locations?
Go to this draw one.
So you have to right click. You gotta right click here in the field.
Well,
and
edit sheet. Okay. And then
that'll
come
take
down.
you to that.
So where is this $ RPT and this draw one? I know the link is here.
Yeah, so that's like
That's where he was working.
what would you call it? Would you call it like API code? That dollars.
Yeah, I mean it is. I would call it that. Yeah, I guess it's what tells
It's
SolidWorks.
almost like
A list of all of that. So
Yeah, it's almost like an API call. And if you see the list we were just talking about, so if you go back to your property tab builder. He's got a computer up running today, so I'm just kind of walking through it here.
I got you. No problem.
This is the group box. You have to have a group box to do anything, so just grab like the text box and drag it into that. But you gotta put it inside the group. There you go. And then see this value, hit that drop down right there. That's where they are.
Yeah, so where does this stay at? That's where you're linking all the, like I could pull center of mass in here. and
Okay,
pull all
so,
that data.
so I see what he's asking David. I'm not 100% sure. I'm assuming it's somewhere in the API, but, so he's saying, yeah, those, so you have SW dash material or whatever, right?
Right.
Where is it storing that information? I know it's storing it in the custom properties. or in
It is
property.
storing, yeah, and that I'm gonna have to find the file location. That's what I was just looking for. I don't know that this is it. So what I was going to is where it's referencing those custom properties from. But I think this is all just user generated when we go to
I really-
this directory.
Yeah, I really
Um,
thought you'd have to get into the APIs to.
Because I
Yeah,
want to use custom properties more in my classes, especially my advanced classes. I want them to set up and know, like that bill of materials example that you just went through. I want them to be able to export an Excel file with the bill, so then they can generate manufacturing flow.
Yeah.
I want to get into that a little bit.
Yeah, and it does live in the metadata too, and
Mhm.
I'll try and publish that video at some point on the Iron Soil YouTube channel.
I really think it's really sweet that you can pull in just a little picture
Because you can
into an
actually,
Excel spreadsheet.
yeah, you can actually go into the system options, and when you're in the system options, you can look at your, I think it's listed as description, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, you click the
There's a
checkbox.
custom property used as component for description, and you can put what you want it to be.
The one I was thinking of though is it's in there, it's a checkbox, and you tell it to display the custom property. So like if you're looking at it in your Windows Explorer, you can actually, if it's a thumbnail, you hover over it and it'll give you all the information about it, like last open time, the rev, all that stuff. And if you do it in the list view, you can actually manipulate your columns to give that information. But other than that, Kevin, as far as doing that,
that, see right here, it says you can auto display property name, auto show. And then right here, that was, so all of these.
now, if you close this or hit this button right here, and you're gonna see it, the drawing right now. Usually when it's the mark,
And then
go to custom there, and then they live right here.
that's what I was looking
But typically, you do it all in the part. You want your part, I think, Dave.
Yep.
Dave said you want your part to be master. Some people will throw information in the document properties for drawing. Sometimes it's like you have somebody checking your work, they don't want to go back to the part model or the assembly model, they'll just do it in the document properties of the drawing itself. I prefer it to be done within the
That's what
part
I
or
was looking
assembly.
for, that file
So,
property.
yeah, I agree with that. I feel like SOLIDWORKS is so part centric, right? Without parts, you can't have assemblies. Without parts, you can't have drawings. So I always feel like if you can add it to the part, that's kind of the best place to add it.
Agreed.
I do a simple
Thank you.
question.
I found, that file properties is where I was, up at the top.
Okay, so that's what he was looking for, was the file properties. We was
Oh,
dancing-
okay.
We was dancing all around it. I think he pulled
Gotcha.
it up.
Yeah. So this is where you can set that up for part numbers, description, all that sort of stuff.
Automatically generated, when you save the file name, it's automatically generated as a. file
Yeah,
property.
so Kevin, if you're wanting to get your more advanced students using this custom property stuff, I'd start here. But I would migrate them from here to that property tab builder, because the
100%.
property tab builder automates this.
Yep.
Yes, they can type it in and then it puts it in automatically.
It's almost like a,
The wizard.
yeah, it's almost like a, what you call low code option for
Yeah.
displaying your description and your property.
Because you can basically tell, you make a part, you can tell them material, finish.
Yep.
Yep.
Revision, who last, you can do probably some rev levels in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we got another question.
Real simple. Recently, I was creating a template, and I have not done it in ages. And I was trying to lock on how things are dimensioned, the font size, the arrow types, balloon size, and all that. And I saved the sheet format and then saved the template, but it would always revert back to some other default. I couldn't understand what the process was. I've forgotten that. It's so long since I created one. So when you say you want to control the dimensions or the fonts and all that, does that travel with the sheet or travel with the template?
Yeah. So if you want to change, like
A
the way your
modified-
dimensions look, like I like the way that looks, that ANSI standard where they're button out with the leader lines and the font
Right.
size and all that sort of stuff. That is all within the template information. That's all handled from this document properties tab. So in this case, what I would do is I would go down to dimensions, and this is where I can change my leader style, right? Size, font.
Those changes. That's what I'm saying is, it didn't travel as I understood. It did not. I made all those changes
Yeah.
many times, but then it still did not save it as I thought.
So let me ask this. So of course you were saving it out as a template file, right?
As a sheet format first, and then as a template.
As a template, okay. And so then after that, were you expecting your current stuff to come up to date, or was you using?
No,
the
just
template?
a new drawing.
Okay,
So
you
I,
didn't-
so I would say this too. Look at doing this too. If you go to, and when you create your new drawing, where you just go in like, create. Well, I'm sorry. Let me go back to a part. When you create your new drawing, are you going it by make drawing from part or assembly? Is that the process you're going, or are you saying new and then you're coming down and picking the drawing template you want to start on and then going that way? What's your process there?
I probably was pretty open to parts. I didn't know that option existed.
Oh, so your process was then to say new, whatever template, pick the template, and then start adding your views into the drawing, correct?
Correct.
All right. So then that negates kind of what I was going down the road. What I was running down the road of is if you're going the other way, right, and saying you wanted to make a new drawing of this part, what SOLIDWORKS does at that point is ingrains what's known as a default document template to do that. So it picks one for you, but it doesn't really pick one for you. You get to pick it, but you have to define it under your default templates. So in this case, for a particular drawing, where I was going is even if you said new document, if you didn't have the default one to be in the one that had all the changes that you liked, you might still be getting that old template.
Okay.
It doesn't seem like that's the case.
He said that's probably what it was. He thinks he was just doing the make new and he didn't update it here.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so maybe that gets you in the right direction. If it doesn't, if you're still having issues, I mean, by all means, right? This is my info. You got anybody there, obviously, is welcome to reach out to me anytime, right? And if it's something that's persistent, still not working, we can set up a Teams call, right? We can figure it out, right?
Yeah, I think it should be pretty easy. It's just dave.ramsey@trimec.com.
It's
If
pretty
you can't
easy.
remember Dave.Ramsey.
Baby
But-
step is on. Financial baby step.
Say that one more time.
He said, what financial baby step are you on?
So I have, we attack our stuff with Gazelle intensity. I will say, actually, we do pretty good. Dave Ramsey he lives like 30 minutes from me. I've got a million stories about Dave Ramsey. We know of each other. We've crossed. What's that?
He said he's based out of Nashville, but you were just saying that's 20 minutes from you, so it makes sense.
Yeah. So he's real close. But yeah, he's the only man that I've ever heard of has made a living off selling common sense. But man, he has made a heck of a living off selling common sense. I'll give him that. But yeah, nobody's let me cut up a credit card yet. So if any of you guys want to be the first, by all means, ship it to me. I'll make a little video and you can say, Dave Ramsey, cut up your credit card.
There you go. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was gonna touch on one thing. This is more toward the start of your presentation, where you were talking about when you were dragging a node from your block and you would say it would attach itself.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you for example.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So like whenever, at all tech, whenever we're doing the drawing, and it'll have a little note in the corner, like, it'll say like, welding must conform to whatever standard we have.
Okay.
Sometimes if I click on it, it's linked to a part, so if I move the part, it moves the drawing around.
Right.
And so what I've been doing is I've been deleting the note and redoing it. Is there a way to, is that,
That's what that checkbox was he was showing you.
so that would unlink it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Will it unlink it, or is it only on the creation of the note after?
It's only on creation of the note, so it would need to be checked or unchecked rather, or I'm sorry, it would need to be checked. Where was that? Dimensions? Did we say that was
Right there it is.
yeah,
You got it.
disable note merging when dragging. Right, so you would need to check that, and then from that point forward, when you drag a note out, right, it should no longer attach to a view or a dimension or whatever the case may be. If they're already like that, you should be able to select the note, and I would, at least it works with GD&T. I thought it did with notes as well, but there should be a little drag handle that you can see next to the note that should allow you to drag that off, I thought, but maybe there's not.
I just always cut and paste.
Yeah, that's what
I'll
I'm
cut
doing.
it out and then I'll paste it off and I'll in somewhere and then bring it back.
But yes, that should keep that from locking on when you drag
Yeah,
those
you
notes
think it's
in the future.
to have that turned on. It might be something that we try and do corporately. If
Yes.
nobody has a reason to link notes, I may check with Brett. If
Well, yeah, because
nobody
I
has
have a note linked to a little tiny part way over here in the corner of the drawing. Why are you linked to that? You know, and
Right.
I'm moving, my note's moving all over the screen.
Okay. Good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing when you showed that earlier, actually. 'Cause I haven't seen that checkbox either.
No, it didn't merge on that one, but that's the idea behind it.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Dave Ramsey.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. I'll let me get on camera real quick. Hang on one second. I'll find it. Let me get go away. I want to wave bye to everybody at least one time. There we go. Here we go. All right. Bye everybody. Have a great evening. Cheers, everybody.
Have a good one.
Yep, you as well.